and I thought this would be an apt position to do it in. It's just the basic intro part.
Literal default characters, and he charges money for it. What the fuck level is that? This guy charges money for it. Gamer game. Look, that's his actual art. That fucking shit. Fuck me. $10. This game is $10. There's a problem with developers that use RPG Maker. They want to tell a story, but most of them aren't programmers. Now that's a problem for most indie game developers of any engine, but RPG Maker is an engine that has everything you need out of the box to build an RPG with little to no programming needed. Game engines in general are designed to accomplish this so that game developers can worry less about coding and focus more on storytelling. But there's a problem when you release an entire engine for a specific genre as its own software. RPG Maker accomplishes its goal of letting anyone design a game with everything you need for the genre and little to no programming needed right out of the box. Anyone with a story, some characters, and art talent, or free assets can take this engine and build an RPG. It's great if you don't know programming, but it makes your RPG the same as all the other RPG Maker games. The classic question you have to ask yourself when selling any type of product is, what makes you different from the competition? And when it comes time for RPG Maker devs to answer that question, most of the time it's all story and assets and not a new feature in the engine. If you look at or play a few RPG Maker games, you can tell instantly if a game is done in RPG Maker. This is because the devs don't bother learning how to program enough to make the gameplay stand out or feel different at all. Unity, Unreal, and Game Maker, on the other hand, are general game engines, open for the creation of any type of games, including RPGs. They're more open for interpretation out of the box. Of course, they can have similar problems too if people just download pre-made genre templates and put them into their game, but it's something the developer has to actively go out of their way to find and configure to work with their game. They aren't out of the box with the engine and already set up to build and release. RPG Maker makes it easy to be lazy and forget about programming because out of the box it has the basics for an RPG ready to go. I'm not trying to shame developers for using RPG Maker. The problem isn't the engine itself. The problem is a mixture of the engine and the lack of motivation of the developers. It creates games that are the same as all the others made in the engine, and before you know it, the market is riddled with them and everybody can tell what game was made in that engine all the time, and just knowing a game was built in that engine starts to become a turnoff. Now you could come back at me and say that Rapid Tap was a terrible generic game that lacked creativity as well, and you'd be right, I'd agree with you. But I didn't try to charge money for my game. I made it purely as a learning experience and to have fun. I didn't plan to make money off it, so I don't have to worry about competing for attention on my game. RPG Maker devs that want to make money off their games, though, have a very difficult time doing so. Let's say you're an RPG Maker developer, ready to tell a new story to the world. Maybe you make a game with a great story, memorable characters, and a killer soundtrack, but you built the game in a stigmatized cookie-cutter engine and you didn't program the gameplay to make it unique at all, and you want to charge money for it. How do you make people try your game? Marketing. You need to sell the strongest points of your game up front and center. Sounds obvious, right? Every game should do that, but RPG Maker devs aren't the best at marketing either. Go to Steam and search the RPG Maker tag right now. Take a look at a few of the pages. Watch the trailer. Notice how most of them feel the same. There's a reason for this, and it's not because they all copy each other. It's because they're showcasing all of their game's features, which is what you're supposed to do in a trailer. But when you use a cookie-cutter genre engine to make a game, you end up having a cookie-cutter trailer for it. They show off all of the RPG Maker features and mechanics that they didn't even make, even bragging about it. I've legit seen someone brag about the ability to walk away from enemies on the board to get through a level. It's not a big accomplishment. When I watch a trailer and it's just generic music over a quick montage of RPG Maker dialogue boxes and combat scenes and nothing else, I just groan. And then I groan louder when I look at the price. Because not only was I bored before, now I'm definitely not interested. And in some cases I just feel insulted. Like the fact that you couldn't program out magic use in your game that has nothing to do with magic at all, so you just threw in a whole bunch of random spells that the player could cast that have nothing to do with magic in general. And then you bragged about that and then threw a price tag over it. I'm not falling for that. It's very obvious what you're doing, and I'm not falling for it. Listen, if you make a game in RPG Maker, and you're depending heavily on the story of it, because you didn't program anything new into the engine, I want you to please try to make your trailer, at the very least, feel like a movie trailer or something like that. Not like it's a gameplay show-off, showcase feature, because all you're doing is showing off RPG Maker mechanics that everybody else has already shown off 20 times over, and you haven't added anything new to it. When I see it, it's very easy to tell when a game is made in RPG Maker. Anytime. Especially the combat screens. The combat screens are usually awful, not even touched, default stuff, and they're just bad. And the monsters are default ones too, and it's really just atrocious. And it's a real shame because a lot of these devs, they probably worked really hard on these games. games. They probably wrote a really killer story, they probably wrote really nice characters, developed them really well, maybe even did the art for the characters and they look really awesome, but I'm never going to want to try it ever. I'm never going to want to try it until you sell me the story and the characters. Most of these trailers aren't doing that. Why would I bother with that? Here's an example of one of my favorite RPG Maker games. And yes, I do have a favorite RPG Maker game. It's called To the Moon, and a lot of you have probably heard about it already. It was a game made in RPG Maker that focused heavily on its story. You moved around in the scenes a little bit to find clues and talk to characters in the scenes and stuff, but other than that, there wasn't really a lot of gameplay. There was some stuff in between scenes where he tried to have you do puzzle stuff. That's whatever. At least he made some attempt to program in something into it. The main selling point of To the Moon isn't even any of the gameplay stuff he tried to make. It isn't the puzzle scene he tried to develop. It isn't even the battles, because there aren't any battles. In fact, at the very beginning of the game, it tries to fake you out and make you think there's gonna be battles all over the game, only to joke around about it and say, lol JK, it's not happening. You know why? Because he understood RPG Maker combat sucks. And he understood that to the point where he just didn't involve it in his game, because he understood what would make his game stand out is the story, is the characters, is the music, is the mood that he was setting as a storyteller. And that's the thing. A lot of RPG Maker devs are just satisfied with saying, I made an RPG, but they didn't even make the programming of it. They didn't even make the mechanics. All they did was make a script for the story and some character designs. And maybe they're really good character designs. And maybe they design really awesome music to go along with it too. I don't know. A lot of the times these guys just find royalty-free music, which is fine. That could be fine as long as it fits, as long as it doesn't feel out of place, as long as it doesn't take you out of the story. But a lot of these devs don't care about that. They don't care about these minute details. And then you end up with all RPG Maker games feeling like shit, and that's why everybody groans when they see RPG Maker. At least I do. It's the same reason why people groan when they see Unity, but it's on an even worse scale. Because at least with Unity, devs have to actively go out of their way to get their game to be a clone of some other template genre. With RPG Maker, the market is flooded with RPG Maker games because out of the box it's already a clone of a ton of games that are already out there, and it's just really depressing when devs don't want to go out of their way to add more to it or to fine-tune what makes their game special. Listen, if you want to make these RPG Maker games just to say that you made an RPG, or maybe you just want a little bit of the experience doing it, or maybe you want to tell yourself and your friends a little story about these characters that you have, fine, make it for free, put it up on itch.io, share it with everybody you want. Please don't put it on Steam with a price tag. You're gonna be really disappointed when people either don't buy your game, they buy it and then they refund it after a couple minutes, or they just shit on it in the reviews underneath. I have a very firm belief, if you're an indie dev, you shouldn't charge for your first games in a certain genre if you're doing it by yourself, because usually it's just because you're learning. So you shouldn't really try to charge for it. But that's at least my own personal rule. I mean, if you look at Rapid, I didn't want to charge for that at all, and with good fucking reason. Look at it. I would feel terrible to charge money for this. I would feel awful. I would never buy this game. Why the fuck should I charge this money if I would never buy this game myself? It doesn't stand out at all. The only unique thing about it is my face on it for funny meme, and a lot of it is still just a work in progress, just for me to learn about it more. There isn't even really any art to it. It's just a whole bunch of blocks. And I'm not saying you're not allowed to make money off your games until you reach a certain point in your development skills. That's, you can try whatever you want. That's just my own personal rule and my own personal feeling, and I feel a good rule of thumb to have for anybody really is if you're making a game and you wouldn't buy it yourself, why the fuck should you charge other people to play it? Here's another example of a game that I played on stream before, Kanji Combat. This was an RPG Maker with well-designed characters and a kind of weak story if you ask me, but it doesn't really matter because the whole point of it is to be an education game for people to learn kanji. Now the game itself had a lot of problems with it. Like number one, there was a whole bunch of magic abilities and items in it that were clearly only just there just because the devs didn't know how to program out those elements of it, but that's fine. The other problem was that to defeat a kanji you had to use its definition against it, and eventually in time your whole page would get filled with these definitions, and you had to go through all the hundreds of definitions you learned to find that definition to use against it. And the reason for this, I'm guessing, is that they didn't want to program the combat system to work differently in a more efficient manner. They just kept adding attacks and attacks and attacks to the players and didn't really care how big the screen got that the player had to scroll through to find the definition to use against the monsters. When I do my anime night streams and we find an RPG Maker game, I'm immediately like, I'm not playing. I can't fucking play. Because I've tried playing RPG Makers on stream and it doesn't go well. Whenever I do my anime night streams and we find an RPG Maker game of the new recent releases, I'm just like, I can't play it. Even if it's one of the only non-hentai games that were released that week, I just can't because they're painful. They're very, very painful. From its terrible grinding and a very generic combat screen to its very boring music. Usually I mute the music and play my own music over it. And its dialogue that usually has bad localization translation, which is fine because, you know, language barriers are a thing. I understand that. But some of these games will have proofreaders that supposedly had gone through and proofread the dialogue that was now being displayed to me. And when I find that out and it's still terrible, that's just awful. I just feel really insulted when that happened. So that's my problem with RPG Maker developers. It's not even really a problem with the engines themselves. It's not really the problem with the developers themselves. It's a mixture of both, because the engine makes it easy to be lazy, and then the developers choose to be lazy as a result. And then you take that and you add a price tag on it, and it's just, it's not good. It's not good for anybody involved. Yeah, sure, you get to pat yourself on the back and say you made an RPG, I guess, but all you really did at the end of the day was make a script and design some characters, which can be fine. That could be fine. That could be perfectly fine if it's really good. Just understand that your game needs to still stand out when it goes onto the marketplace. Otherwise, nobody's gonna want to try it out. It might be the next to the moon. I would never know if you didn't sell it like it's the next to the moon. When you just show me all the same combat that I've seen time and time again, I don't really need to see it again. It just gets frustrating. It really does. RPG Maker devs, I wish you all the best, but really, I hope you guys improve at what you do in time. I want there to be a day where I open up an RPG Maker game on stream and I'm excited for it and I enjoy playing it. I can't wait for that day when one of you guys really impresses me, because as of right now, I can't with a lot of these things. I just can't. Some of them I give them a try off stream and they're just as bad as I thought, so I get glad that I didn't play it on stream, and then I refund it, because that's what people do. That's what people do these days. Even if you convince people to try out your game, you still have to get them to not refund it. You have to make them not feel like they were just scammed into buying another RPG Maker default out-of-the-box clone yet again. And that can be a difficulty in itself, even if you make a really good game and program your own stuff into it. That can be its own challenge, but that's, you know, a different topic for a different time. So that's my rant on RPG Maker devs currently, and I really do hope things improve in time. Anyways, thank you all for listening to me ramble yet again. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Twitch, follow me in life, and I'll talk to you all later.
Since I was a young man, I've had this plan to stay in Japan as some type of ninja picture, living like a Christian scripture, differ, thinking bigger, baptized in Savannah River, living an habitual individual.